over in Finland. He's turned pro. And this is
another very convenient way
onto that title, which got him here. And I think he's like a physique.
We'll see them compared, and Sean Ray,
Republic,
but really hasn't necessarily
guys who both competed on the Olympia stage.
Looks to take out the champ, and from
really hurts him. But when he turns around to the back
on Saturday night at this contest, this guy's trying to put together a Sean Ray type of streak of being an elite bodybuilder for a long time.
And he took a 7-year break before he came back and won the North Americans to actually turn pro to take care of his ailing father. So he's had a very good run.
The king of the gym, Josh Lonardo.
We're getting our first look at Australia's own Josh Lonardo, fast becoming one of the most popular bodybuilders on the planet. He is the pride of Australia. He already has 3 pro wins to his credit. He won just about a month ago in Tampa, and then shortly after that, he stumbled on a horrific, tragic situation when a guy he was living with named Dallas McCarver tragically and unexpectedly died almost in his presence. It was an unbelievable thing. Josh discovered Dallas and called 911. The story has been well documented. What Josh has endured over the last month is more than any bodybuilder should have to endure preparing for a contest of this magnitude. And Sean Ray, it is not only remarkable how good Josh looks, but it's even more extraordinary what he's had to go through to get to this point.
And we do know that the mind is the weakest link when it comes down to this level of preparation. Some guys like Brandon Currie left his family for 3 months to go to Kuwait to train, while this guy was battling to keep his friend alive to no avail. He won the Tampa Pro and was on the highest of highs in early August, and by the time the rubber met the road, he was there at a funeral service. So it's amazing that he's here. He's not even he's from Australia, so he's been here ever since he won the Tampa Pro and had to endure a whole lot more than most of these guys.
And I know Josh was dedicating this weekend to Dallas McCarver. And by the way, for those of you guys who aren't up on the story, we're talking about a 26-year-old bodybuilder with incredible promise who tragically had his life end just a few short weeks ago. And it was really a situation that rocked the bodybuilding world. So Josh, we're happy that you could make it to the stage. And of course, our thoughts are with Dallas, his fans and his family and friends who continue to grieve just an awful situation. And it really has cast a cloud over really so much of this weekend because everybody misses Dallas here in Las Vegas.
And Josh is representing Dallas, so kudos to him, and that memory will not be long forgotten. And this guy right here, your reigning Arnold Classic champion, Big Mac, the military man, looks like he lost a bit of his polish from the Arnold Classic. Definitely hit his peak back in March. It doesn't translate here in September. However, the lines are there. We talked about Classic and all that good stuff. This is the guy that could easily win this contest if he nailed his condition here in Las Vegas. But I think he's at a disadvantage because I think what happens is he does everything he can in March and he can't hang on here in September.
But let's see how it plays out as the night progresses. Cedric McMillan has become just a real favorite among the fans.
No doubt.
He came on and he was viewed as a legitimate Olympia, future Mr. Olympia, and I think that moniker still holds true. Cedric has the potential of being great. I don't know if he's going to be good enough tonight to sort of crack through and get to that next level, but if momentum is such a thing, he is the reigning Arnold Classic champion, so he does come in with some real momentum. People saw that playful onstage presence between he and Arnold Schwarzenegger in Columbus earlier this year. Cedric McMillan always says the right thing. He has a lot of fun up there on that stage, and he seems to really enjoy doing the business of bodybuilding.
He brought Classic back to this level of competition on the open side because he's a big man. He's 6'1", 280 pounds. It's hard to rip it up, and you want to see a guy ripped up on stage.
But I will say this. Cedric McMillan wants to be viewed in that top group as among the world's elite.
He is.
His highest Olympia finishes are 7th and 12th. So a lot of people feel that for him to take that next level, he's got to come here on this stage and he's got to put up.
Right. And it's hard to do when you peak in March. But he looked respectable so far. I can't wait to see him in the comparisons.
Jeff Beckham walking out with some swagger. He, of course, was your overall winner of the 2012 Team Universe. It's not every day that we see a former Team Universe champion here rocking the Olympia stage. How about that?
Not to mention it's his first time. The guy got here on points. He did the business. To get here on points means you got to compete often and you got to compete a lot, and we all know how hard that is. So we don't expect him to be shredded. He is a taller bodybuilder in the lines of Cedric McMillan. You can clearly see the size differences between him and Cedric, the chest most notably. But this is a guy that said, you know what, I'm qualifying, I'm going. This for him is a dream come true regardless of how he places.
And it's so great that you said that, Sean, because the Olympia, to some guys, it's not just about being here to win a title. It's about being in the All-Star game, right? I mean, this is where all the greats are. So you want to be on this stage. And for a guy like Jeff, you can be sure as he looks around and he's pumping up backstage and he's a few feet from Phil Heath and he's got Dexter Jackson to his right and Sean Roden to his left. It's an incredible thing, and I'm sure he's taking this thing in, and he and his family are just having a ball.
Yeah, and he said he studied the old school guys. He studied the old posing. He loved Vince Taylor and flex, and he liked the art of posing as a physique artist, and so he's biting off all those guys. But this sport has taken him to places he never thought imaginable, all the way to Dubai and different countries like Germany and Australia. He did it the hard way. He had to go out there and just keep racking up the points, and for him, he doesn't have to win this to be a winner. If I have to be critical on him, of course, he's run out of a lot of gas. Earlier in the year, he looked considerably sharper. He's respectably sharp, but it could be a little bit darker. A darker tan will help him. And of course, he's one of the more flexible athletes. And when doing that, you see a lot of areas that he's not complete in.
Well, if you were thinking about walking away to get a snack or take a bathroom break, now is not the time, because we're going to get a look at Mamadou Elsbaye. We call him Big Ramy, and a lot of anticipation surrounding the beast from the East. And Bob Ciccarello brings him out, and they call him Big Ramy for a very obvious reason. He is a massive bodybuilder with extreme proportions, massive quad sweep, insane shoulder to shoulder, and he's got it all. I mean, this is a guy who is just loaded with muscle on top of muscle. The bodybuilding world has been waiting for him to put it together. And Sean, I'm going to let you break down what appears to be the most well-conditioned Big Ramy we've ever seen.
He showed up here at 305. Just to see him now at 295, he definitely dropped some water. Came all the way from Dubai. It's a very long trip. Training with the Camel crew out there at the Oxygen gyms under Bader Budai, working with the legendary trainer Chris Cormier. The thighs are world class. They are huge. He wound up getting here. He won the Kuwaiti Pro Championships, and in doing so, he beat Dexter Jackson and Sean Roden. However, he didn't beat them here last year.
All right, now let's break this thing down. This is an impressive Big Ramy. He was 4th here a year ago. I think he's poised to move up the way he's looking. We're going to see how he compares. Criticize this physique for me. Tell me what's wrong with it.
Well, I mean, the glaring weakness is the calves, obviously. He did tear his hamstring a year ago, so I know that he's lightened up on the hamstring work. You got to be afraid to do that again, so I know he moved very cautiously because his quads are so dominant, so powerful, and those hamstrings are a little bit more delicate and fragile. The upper back and the shoulders and the arms, they're all there. You can see that. The lower back still needs a little bit of work, but it's coming.
Is this the best Big Ramy we've seen?
I'm going to reserve that till I see him standing next to the other guys. Right now, I've seen Ramy in person competing in several different competitions. Ramy's a very dangerous bodybuilder. Again, the only person he didn't beat last year was the reigning champion, and that was Phil Heath. He beat everyone else. And of course, Dexter Jackson beat everyone else, and Sean Roden had a little bite at the apple. So this is going to be one of those things where we got to see them standing next to each other. But right now, Ramy is representing, and when I say big, you got to be out there standing next to this guy. He casts a very big shadow.
At the very least, this is the most confident Big Ramy we've ever seen. This is a different stage presence than we saw from the far more timid bodybuilder that graced the stage when he was first coming up. So this is a guy who's starting to feel it. He knows what this process is all about. He's getting some swagger, and quite frankly, he has earned it as he looks to challenge Phil Heath tonight in Las Vegas.
And winning will do that. It will give you confidence that you never thought was there, and you start to get the feedback. Social media, the trainers, he's representing a country. He's got a country on his shoulders that he's bringing over here. The army of Oxygen Gym and the Camel crew are in his corner.
Gerald Williams.
You're going to see a very different physique here when Gerald Williams
Night and day.
walks out. That's a tough act to follow, but he's your 2017 California Pro Champ. He was also 3rd at our good friend Chad Nichols' Mayhem show earlier this year. It was actually his Olympia debut. So Gerald, welcome to the Olympia stage.
Yeah, teen national champion. His arms are really his weakness, his flaw. He looks like an athlete, the very, very tiny waist, but he doesn't have the Olympia arms. And this is a show where you have to have those arms. He's a little bit slight. This contest is way out of his league, but he got here the way that everybody else has to get here, and that's by winning. Now, that being said, this Olympia experience will transpire to his next competition that he goes after for the paycheck. Being an Olympian is not an easy thing to do. He deserves to be here, but he's got a long way to go to actually be considered a threat. But we saw what Johnny Jackson did. He built a career 1 year at a time, and he's competing in his 13th Olympia. This is a young man. He's got a real job. He does a lot of real world stuff, and yet he found a way to qualify, picked the right show, and he's here.
Well, Sean, I got to tell you, it's a real thrill to be able to do this with you and call the action. You've obviously been on the Olympia stage many, many times, holding the distinction of being a 5 finisher 12 years in a row. Nobody has ever done that. And it's a real sense of history when we're able to have you along for the ride, and the coverage team. You always do a great job. Give us a sense for what this Olympia has become, because it's taken on so many different changes, so many different forms, and you've kind of seen it every step of the way.
It seems a lot more inclusive. I mean, when I was there, the top 10 guys, everybody seemed to have a bite at the apple. Everyone was a superstar. And here you got a nice blend of veterans with Dexter and the fresh meat, like Lionel Beck and Gerald Williams. These are young guys. Josh Lonardo. Those are guys we'll be talking about 5 years from now when we're not talking about Dexter Jackson. Speaking of older bodybuilders, the Dominican Dominator, this guy's built a career right here on this bodybuilding stage.
What's amazing is, as we look at Victor Martinez, who, by the way, looks much better than he did when he was here a year ago. We are talking about a guy, let's remember, let's get some perspective. 10 years ago tonight, this is a guy that a lot of people felt won this contest.
I was here and I agree.
Yeah, a lot of people felt when he showed down with Jay Cutler in 2007 that he could have won that title. Here we are 10 years later, and Victor Martinez is still doing it. He's, of course, a former Arnold Classic champion. He got here by winning earlier this year at that Mayhem Pro that I mentioned earlier. And Victor Martinez has done himself and his fans very proud with this showing.
And a lot has happened in those 10 years. Victor was sitting in a jail cell on immigration issues for almost 7 or 8 months in the midst of all of that. Came out almost a shell of a man and rebuilt his body. Not only that, but he came back and he started winning. I mean, he won the Baltimore Pro Championships. He won the Muscle Mayhem to get here. And so talk about a guy that's had adversity thrown at him and just shoves it off and keeps coming back. That 2007 defeat to Jay Cutler is a career ender for some people. I know Bertil Fox in '83, he got 5th place. He was never the same. Mike Mincer in Australia, never the same after Arnold. This guy came back.
We try to get to Victor earlier and see if he would give us some kind of sense for how many more years he wants to continue doing this. And, at this point, he's taking it 1 year at a time. But for Victor Martinez, I will tell you this, and I've covered hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of bodybuilders. Victor Martinez has been one of the great stories, one of the great athletes that I've had the privilege of covering throughout the entirety of his 17 years in the pro ranks. Now we're going to look at a guy who's a bit of a wild card tonight. Brandon Currie is extremely dangerous. He's ventured out there to Oxygen Gym, where he has sort of reshaped his entire approach to training. And he is a guy who has proven that when he gets it together, he has the ability to win any show he enters. He's extremely formidable, and tonight he's looking to take a run at an Olympia top 6 finish.
And this guy's 5'6", 252 pounds. I believe when he turned pro, he had to be somewhere in his low 220s. Going out there to Kuwait has been a very good investment that's paid dividends. He walked into this competition with 2 pro wins in 2017 over New Zealand, and he added the Arnold Classic Australia to his already Arnold Classic Brazil title, and I believe he won over in Canada as well. This is the best Brandon Currie that we've seen on this Olympia stage. Father of 4, married to an IFBB pro bikini competitor, Brandy Lever. And he spends so many hours and months away from home doing this. This investment is paying off for Brandon Currie.
Well, he's on a bit of a winning streak. You know, he's won his last 2 contests, including the Arnold Australia. And you kind of just summed up his whole story. He's become one of the hottest properties in the business. His story is very reminiscent of the Dexter Jackson story from a few years ago when we kind of thought Dexter was done. We thought his best years were behind him. And all of a sudden, he kind of revisited his approach, changed some things up. Now he's back, and Brandon Currie has a chance to really threaten for a top spot in this show.
Yeah, his legs were his weak points, and they've actually come up. They haven't caught to the upper body, but they have come up.
I was about to say that Brandon Currie has a chance to be this year's William Bonac. Speaking of William Bonac, last year's, really one of the biggest stories of last year's Olympia. He's now has 6 pro wins to his credit. He was 5th here a year ago, kind of snuck up on everybody, but you can be sure, Sean Ray, that he isn't sneaking up on anybody this year. He is a known commodity coming into the 2017.
Yeah, the guys are fully aware of William Bonek's got a few pro wins under his belt. Working with Neil Hill, I don't know where he can put any more muscle on his frame. And mind you, Brandon Currie outweighs him by nearly 30 pounds. And this guy, it looks, you can't put another pound on him. I know that he's, I think, 5 pounds heavier than a year ago. And he's very confident. It's going to be interesting to see the comparisons because by himself, there's nothing more that he can put on his frame.
This is a guy that, as we were talking about Dexter Jackson and Sean Roden and Phil Heath, his name didn't always come up. But I was always quick to remind everyone, William Bonek has all the tools to challenge for this title. And I'll be clear about that. He's got the tools to challenge. His body might not be as pretty as Phil Heath. He might not be able to get as hard as Dexter Jackson. But from shoulder to calf, this guy is extremely impressive.
And he's very strong, representing the Netherlands. Williams, the only knock on William, I think he has to get some more thigh separation in those quadriceps. Sometimes he has a tendency to relax the midsection. He's got a very short Kai Greenis midsection. There's not a lot of space between the pecs and the waistline, which makes him look a little bit boxy at times, but he is the official new giant killer as it relates to the Olympia stage. Big arms, ripped pecs, nice traps. Very well represented tonight.
From the USA, Michael Lockett.
All right, Sean, we're getting a look at Michael Lockett now. This guy has had a very, very busy year. He has competed, and get this, 4 different Arnold Classics this year alone. He won 2 events, one Chicago and Vancouver, and he is now competing here at the Olympia in Las Vegas, where this is a guy who, as he has been coming up, has been celebrated as a very legitimate future threat in this sport. He's got a lot of things going for him.
Well, if he picks the right show. Right now, I think he's got to work on the gyno. He's got a little bit of gyno right there around the nipple, some swelling right there. He's going to have to get that surgically repaired. A lot of bodybuilders have had to experience that. I think his strength right now is his calves and his hamstrings, that separation between the leg on the side, but then you turn around and you lose the hamstring. So from the side, it looks a little bit more representative. The back, again, this is a contest where the glutes are shredded and you look there, but when he opens up the back, the detail kind of is not there. That's where he's got to work on. That's been his Achilles heel. He picks the right contest, he can win. This is a contest that definitely he's showing the world that he's one of the best in the world, but what he's got to do to really stand out is he's got to add more sweeps to the quadricep, more meat on the bone in the back area, and I think he's doing very well for what he has to work with.
Michael Lockett gives you a real sense for just how far this whole thing has come. When you start talking about picking apart a physique like this, which is extremely good, and this is a guy who walks out there, and we can pick him apart. And it's amazing because that's how far some of these top-tier guys have become, where a guy like Michael Lockett walks out there, and it's just hard for him to compare at that level.
Absolutely.
Jackson.
All right, well, you are looking at the most decorated bodybuilder in the history of the sport. He has 28 pro wins to his credit, making him the winningest professional bodybuilder of all time. He turns 48 in November. Now, we just talked about Victor Martinez being 10 years removed from nearly winning Olympia title. Dexter Jackson, incredibly enough, is 9 years removed from being Mr. Olympia, and he is here right now on this stage, not just as a participant, but as a bona fide, legitimate contender for this title here 9 years after he won this thing in 08.
I believe he'll be 48 years old in November. I mean, it's just a number as far as he's concerned. He's a top 6 competitor no matter what happens on this stage. He just has the genetics, and you just have it or you don't. I don't see the drop-off. Usually when you get older, you start seeing guys dropping off. Dexter seems to be holding on to that mass, and most of the people, when you get older, you start to lose it in the legs, and the legs are still there for Dexter. They haven't failed him.
He's got that signature dense, grainy muscle that has become his calling card. It's what sort of has helped earn him the title, the Blade, for his uncanny ability to come in shape almost every time he walks on stage. All the talk this year, and Dexter was very open about it, was his added size. He was very quick to boast about the added muscle. He had reported getting up to as heavy as, what, 260 pounds at points throughout this year.
Yeah.
And the question is, are you seeing that added size translate here tonight?
I'm definitely not seeing a diminished size factor. I'm not sure if he looks that much wow factor big, but he looks like Dexter is a study of consistency. He doesn't change a lot from year to year. I think you hit the point where you know what to expect from Dexter. The calves are never going to be what they should be, but he still finds a way to highlight the traps, highlight the delts, highlight the pecs and the shoulders. He does the best with what he has to work with, better than anybody else, which is why he's still here.
Mad Max Charles.
All right, well, 4 years ago, Max Charles won himself a USA title, of course, the same title held by our reigning champion, Phil Heath. He has now competing for the 4th time this year. So Max Charles has kept busy. One of those events was in Columbus at the Arnold Classic, where he scored a top 3 finish, sort of putting himself on the bodybuilding map.
Yeah, he was actually leading Dallas McCarver right behind Brandon Currie in the Australia show before Dallas had some complications. Max looks tired here. I saw him earlier in the year in the spring. The stomach is just not there. The detail's not there. The quads don't have the separation. He wanted to be in this contest, and sometimes you do it because you love it, but at the same time, it doesn't translate physically. And right now, what we're seeing is a physique that's a little bit tired. I'm sure Max is looking forward to a nice long off season. He said his preparation started in December, so he's literally been on one since December, and here we are towards the tail end of September.
All right, you're watching Amazon Sports Nutrition's presentation of Joe Weider's Olympia Fitness and Performance Weekend. We are going through our first look at our 18 Mr. Olympia competitors, Dan Solomon along with Sean Ray, and in just a moment, we're gonna get a look at your 6-time defending reigning champion, Phil Heath. And of course, all eyes are on Phil as he looks to equal the mark of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger and pick up a 7th Sandow Trophy. Based on the way a few of these guys have come in so far, it's not going to be an easy title for him, but if Phil is able to bring to the stage what we know he can, it almost becomes a foregone conclusion. Having said that, the opportunity to see Dexter Jackson and Sean Roden flanked on either side of Phil is sort of what we're all waiting for. And I got to be honest with you, I think this contest goes beyond those 3.
It does. The X Factor is going to be Big Ramy, and of course the Pocket Rocket, William Bonek. One of the guys won't be there, will be Max Charles. Again, he just doesn't have the detail to be competitive, and we've seen him much harder, much more separated, especially in the spring. So Max is going to be along for the ride here tonight. But yeah, all eyes are on Mr. Consistency, and that would be Phil Heath.
And your final competitor, from the USA, is your 6-time reigning and defending Olympia champion, the Gift, Phil Heath.
Sean, 11 years ago at your event in Colorado at the Sean Ray Classic, a young man named Phil Heath, who was competing in his hometown that night, made his professional debut. He wowed the crowd. It was a victorious debut. He won a week later in New York, and so began one of the most illustrious careers this sport has ever known. He has since gone on to win the Olympia 6 times, and tonight he's gunning for number 7. He and his trainer, Hani Rambod, have put in the work. They devised a plan, so I'm going to let you, Sean Ray, be the first here in 2017 to assess this version of Phil Heath.
It was a long time ago, Dan. Phil has done many things in those 11 years with what he has to work with, and mind you, he didn't wake up and become Mr. Olympia overnight. He put in the work. He won that junior national title. Wound up coming up winning the USA's right here in Las Vegas, and he's plotted his way. I believe he started off in the Mr. Olympia not as Mr. Olympia. He was 4th place, worked his way up to first runner-up behind Jay Cutler, and ultimately grabbed the title, and here he is. And so far, I got no complaints. And again, from the back, this is where these shows are won and lost. Those hamstrings, that back, I haven't seen anybody matching him in this.
Yeah, it really is a winning formula. It's just a level of dimension that most guys just really in the history of the sport haven't been able to bring to the stage. It is eye-popping, jaw-dropping muscle as Phil Heath gets the crowd behind him, and it's really fun watching Phil sort of evolve as a professional. The way he takes the stage, the way he commands the stage, he hits his shots. He knows what he's here to do. This is very much a workmanlike business trip for Phil Heath, and he's here to continue his reign atop the sport. But make no mistake about it, each year it's a different look for Phil.
Olympia champion Phil Heath.
All right, we're going to go ahead and throw it to Carla Sanchez, who's with our classic physique champion backstage.
That includes all 18 of our individual presentations.
Thanks, Dan. I'm here with Breon Ansley. You won. This is our classic physique champion. Now, you had a strategy. You were 4th last year. You decided to go and compete in the New York Pro. Tell us about that.
Well, I wanted to make a statement in New York. I didn't want to just take off all year and from last year's Olympia to this year's Olympia and have them forget about me, because, you know, this whole thing is a strategy thing. And so I wanted to make a statement in New York, thousands of miles away from my home in LA, and take the title in New York to qualify again here to win this Olympia title, and it feels amazing.
Congratulations. This is awesome. So you competed in bodybuilding. What made you decide to make the switch to classic physique?
Well, in 212, in the 212 division, you know, it's about, you have to be a mass monster to be a top 5 guy. And I'm not really too excited and too keen on being 230, 40 pounds.
And you are the Olympia Classic Physique champion, so congratulations.
Thank
you did
so
it.
much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, we're back and we're continuing our prejudging round here at the Mr. Olympia. It is a night of champions. So far we have crowned 3. Breon Ansley, the Classic Physique champion. Oksana Grishina takes the Fitness Olympia title. And Sydney Gillen is your champion of the 2017 Figure Olympia. And we are going to soon learn how this Mr. Olympia is going to play out. But of course we will not know that outcome until tomorrow night's finals. But first things first, we have to put these guys through the rigors of comparison. And you can be sure Steve Weinberger is going to make these gentlemen work.
And I mean, Steve can look at these guys pretty much like I can, Dan, and know who's going to wind up where in terms of these call-outs. The fans are definitely interested in seeing their fan favorite standing next to the better guys. Right now, I think Phil's still in the lead. I mean, I just didn't see anybody stand up to him from the back. I want to see what they look like next to him in the front. Phil looked a little bit heavy in the midsection. He's got to be careful in between poses. You let that stomach out, and everybody's going to be looking at it. And him being a champion, he needs to be acutely aware that that midsection has got to be tucked away, along with Sean Roden, when the time comes, especially in the transitional poses. Now you're going to be standing next to guys that potentially can either out-muscle you or be in better condition than you. And if you want to stand out, you've got to make sure that you look at your best when you're in those comparison rounds.
Now, Sean, just to be clear, what we're looking at here, this is not a call-out. These are the numerical comparison portion of the judging, where they bring them out. You're looking at competitor 7 through 12, and they are being put through 7 through 11, and they bring them out that way. So this is not to be read into at this point.
No, what this does is give the judges one quick look at what they think they're going to want to see compared next to each other. And this is a very important round, although a lot of people think it's meaningless. The judges have to see you in these quarter turns when you're not, flexing on a double bicep.
And by the way, you guys just saw at the lower portion of the screen the various commentators. We are actually presenting this event worldwide in multiple languages. So we are extremely proud of the global participation by all of our various partners, and really all continents are able to experience this event live as we watch it here play out in Las Vegas. This sport has become just an international phenomenon, and the fact that our friends at Amazon.com have sort of helped us bring this thing to the world is an incredible thing, and I know the fans around the world appreciate it.
Absolutely, Dan. Supply and demand. This is happening in every little nook and corner of the world. I had the chance to go to China this past February, and it was amazing, the reception for the knowledge, just for the education. They are tuned in. They're all paying attention to their health. They're paying attention to supplements as well as competition. So the world is a fit place, and Joe Weider predicted that back when he started this thing on this global expansion with his brother Ben. And Amazon.com is definitely paying it forward by sharing this with the rest of the world.
All right, folks, moving into our comparisons. We're going to have all 18 Olympians on stage.
This is where the rubber hits the road, Dan. The first, all-important first call out. It usually sets the tone for who's who and what's what in terms of final placements. Everybody on that stage wants to be in that very first call out. Naturally, if Phil Heath's name is called out, you want to be standing next to Phil Heath.
Funny, I interviewed Steve Weinberger a short while ago over at digitalmuscle.com, and when I did that, I asked him about that responsibility, that pressure of being the voice that gives the most coveted call out of the year, that coveted Olympia first call out. The bodybuilders train all year trying to be in that first group. Right now, Steve Weinberger is gathering the opinions of his panel, but it's his voice that's going to tell these gentlemen who that first group he wants to look at, and you're going to hear it right now.
Dexter and Phil.
It's a lot of guys to be calling out in the first call out. I remember, Dan, when they called out 3 guys.
Well, you're not looking at any surprises here. I think this is kind of the group that we were looking for. Brandon Currie did make his way into this first call out, and I know that's something that he obviously wanted to achieve. But with Sean Roden and last year's top 5 finisher, William Bonac, and of course Phil, this is, and Big Ramy, this is a group that we sort of anticipated seeing. And Dexter Jackson, once again, assumes his spot and an Olympia first call out.
And right away, they're moving Big Ramy in close next to Phil Heath, and Phil's like, bring it on. Phil's not shy with 6 Olympia titles at home on his mantle. And of course, these guys are all nipping at his heels. But Big Ramy is serving notice with the shoulders and the thighs.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you to compare Phil Heath to Mamdouh Alasbaye Big Ramy right now, because this is a key comparison.
That's a very close comparison. Apples and oranges still, because Phil's a little bit more genetically advantaged there. He's put together a little bit more pleasing, but you can't ignore those arms on Big Ramy or those thighs.
A little more dimension and depth to the upper half of Phil Heath's physique. Obviously, Ramy has the overpowering thighs. Of course, Phil Heath's thighs aren't too shabby either. So you're talking about 2 of the very best in the planet. It's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out as we move forward, and not to be forgotten all of this, you know, Dexter Jackson and Sean Roden and William Bonac, and now, of course, Brandon Currie arrives in this group.
We moved around and shuffled quite a bit, but right now, Dan, I'm going with Big Ramy and Phil Heath as the leaders of this lineup. Big Ramy's too big to ignore, and Phil is the reigning and defending champion. I think Phil is appearing a little bit bloated, and that's going to work against him if he doesn't dry that up by tomorrow, but that's the thing, Dan. They will have time to improve on what we see as shortcomings here tonight.
And Phil has a history of making key adjustments in those 24 hours.
Makes the difference in winning and losing. I've saw him losing and yet win because he made such a transformation in 24 hours.
Well, I think so far what we know is Big Ramy is climbing the ladder. He's moving up.
He's serving notice, but I got to tell you, I think Phil is still holding steadfast on that #1 placement. I'm going to be curious to see what's going to happen after Phil and Ramy, because right now I got Phil and Ramy. So if that's my 1 and 2, I got to look at 3 and 4.
And let's look at Ramy and Dexter, because Dexter outconditions Big Ramy all day.
He does.
And you know, so it's funny because we're always, you know, we're quick right now. We're jumping right on the Ramy train, but right next to Big Ramy, to his left, is Dexter Jackson, which brings a completely different look. So I think we owe it to the process to compare these guys appropriately.
Absolutely. And when they start to change them around, we'll start changing our appearances accordingly, because that's what the call-out's for. So now William Bonac's going to get the opportunity to stand to the left of the champion. I don't know that William Bonac has the size just yet to stand next to Phil or Big Ramy. But Ramy does look a little bit flat. He could have a little bit more oil on his body to shine just a little bit more. All these guys are going to look considerably better by tomorrow after they get done posing. But Phil, you see the water coming out on Phil's chest. As he starts to shine, we're seeing the sweat come out. That's the water that you can hold subcutaneously under your skin. Brandon, he's not sweating. Big Ramy is not sweating. That's because they've dried out as much as they can. Phil looks like a little bit raw to him, especially in the midsection. It's coming out on the chest, shoulders, and arms.
Phil and Ramy back in line, please. Rolly, Nathan, Josh, and Cedric, come join us.
Dexter, William Bonac, Phil Heath, and Big Ramy were sent back in line, which gives us our first sort of tip of the hand as to what head judge Steve Weinberger is thinking.
It's not just him, it's the collectively, and I think that's appropriate. I was looking at the exact same thing. I mean, William Bonac moved up as far as I'm concerned. He was 5th a year ago. They took the top 4 and set them aside. Now, this is where the contest is, because I think that top 4 actually set themselves apart. And Sean Roden is not a happy camper right here, but it's a warranted situation. Sean didn't have what he had a year ago. Last year's first runner-up, you can still see he relaxes in the stomach, is still, there's a little bit of distension there. And the detail in the quads, he looks to be a heavier bodybuilder than last year, and that doesn't work with a physique like Roden. And when you see the double bicep, it's just not, something's off in that. A year ago he was on, it's not there. And of course Brandon Currie has got to be one of the happier bodybuilders, even though he's in call-out number 2. This is a guy, this is his 3rd contest this year. So if anybody's happy up there right now, it's Brandon Currie. If anybody's pissed off, it'd be Sean Roden. I know Nathan Diaz is happy. And Cedric McMillan, I've never seen him not be a happy bodybuilder regardless of the placement.
He's always happy no matter what he's doing, but unfortunately he is not going to do what we've been waiting for him to do on an Olympia stage. It doesn't look like that's going to happen tonight.
And you can see that in the face. I saw it yesterday. The face just didn't look like he suffered, like, you know. And some bodybuilders aren't willing to suffer because they're not going to, you know, give everything they have to this sport. They're going to do the best with what they have. Cedric's probably been very busy after winning the Arnold Classic. I got to tell you, Dan, 91 I won the Arnold Classic and I went on tour. By the time I got to the Mr. Olympia, I went through the motions. There's a lot that goes with winning that Arnold Classic in March that you kind of run out of gas by September. The other bodybuilders didn't have that same disposition, especially Phil. He was well rested. Cedric McMillan right now, his shape is keeping him in this game.
And of course, the new trend with technology is these guys will watch themselves on the big monitor as they're hitting these shots. So they are watching this event right along with the rest of you guys here on the big screens here at the Orleans Arena. But I got to tell you, this is where it gets, like you mentioned, Sean Ray, this gets really difficult right now for the judging panel because there's not a lot separating these guys, and it's all about getting into that top 6. That's that elite fraternity over the course of years, that top 6 at the Olympia.
Yes.
And right now, it's very much up for grabs.
And there's 2 guys from this call-out that are going to try to move into that top 6. Roy Winkler looks like he's holding his own, but again, he gets better as he poses. That water's coming out, he gets better. Sometimes he forgets the stomach. Brandon Currie is a guy that could wind up cracking that top 6. And Sean, right now, I just don't see him coming up.
Well, it looks like they're going to move Sean into, they're going to swap Nathan and Sean Roden. And Sean Roden's just trying to fight his way back.
Yes.
And, you know, I would say don't give up on Sean Roden yet because he can fight his way into this top group. He is a notorious top 5 finisher here at the Olympia for the last several years. And so
that Nathan Diaz got called up into the center. He's a good little bodybuilder from the UK. Again, the lower back needs some work on it, but he's a very complete little bodybuilder.
And he is, Steve is putting them to work. He's kind of creating every type of comparison. I know these guys, when it's all said and done, the only complaint we hear is they always say, why didn't you let me stand next to that guy? And I know Steve's doing everything he can right now to make sure that nobody asks that question. And right now these guys are going to hit a most muscular, and we're going to see if we can find some point of difference to separate these guys.
Well, it's a pretty big
gentlemen, hit a front double bicep.
deal when you were 2nd in the world a year ago and you're battling to stay in the top 6, Dan. And that's a strong reality for Sean Roden. He's wrestling with that mentally right now because he has no idea what the judges are going to do with him as he's being moved around in this lineup.
So every year we look at an Olympia lineup and we'll say, who nailed it? And based on what we're seeing so far, if anybody were to ask me who nailed it, I don't know if I have an answer for him.
I don't either. I mean, there's a little bit of criticism for all the guys. Again, Phil looked a little bit bloated in the stomach, and he didn't hold it in the transitions. Big Ramy looked a little bit flat, could have had a little bit darker color, could have had a little more shine on his physique. William Bonek looked a little bit tighter than he did last year in certain poses, but not a lot of improvement. I know he's 5 pounds heavier, but not a lot of improvement on William Bonek. I think by default, he's moving up, and Roden is the one that's paying the price.
And if you're just joining us here at the Orleans Arena for our coverage of Olympia weekend, that all-important first call-out, the way it played out is Phil Heath, Big Ramy, William Bonek, and Dexter Jackson were sent back in line, which kind of gave us a sense that they are being looked at as the top 4, at least early on in the competition. So if you were kind of waiting to see how this might play out, Phil Heath, Big Ramy, William Bonek, Dexter Jackson seem to have the early look for those top 4. But my guess is Steve is going to continue to make these guys work as he goes a little bit further down the lineup into some of the lower call-outs.
And again, Dan, I mean, these guys all won a pro event to be here, with the exception, I believe, on points, Max Charles. And, of course, some of these athletes might have wanted not to come into this contest. We know mentally Josh Lonardo is probably burnt. On one occasion, he qualifies by winning the Tampa Pro, and he's excited about doing Olympia. The next thing you know, he's at a funeral. Max Charles traveled the globe in order to gather up enough points to be here, along with Jeff and of course Johnny Jackson comes basically out of retirement to qualify for this contest. He's in the last call out, but this is a veteran. He's been here 13 years. Where else does he want to be?
You know, this might be one of the more impressive last call-outs. We'll see. I mean, there's some really good bodybuilders in this group. So it's great to see just the quality in this Olympia lineup, because when these guys were out there by themselves, these guys look pretty good.
Yes, they did.
And here we are looking at them in what appears to be a last call-out situation. But you just can't say enough, as we sort of process what's played out so far, that Dexter Jackson, at almost 48 years old, is back in what appears to be the Olympia top 4 again.
Right, and a couple of his colleagues. You got Victor Martinez. We may be seeing the last of Victor Martinez here at the Olympia, along with Johnny Jackson, both 40-plus-year-old bodybuilders who I don't know how much gas in the tank they have, because they're usually typically up there in the top. I mean, Victor's used to being up in the top, and this is not something that's a pleasant experience for Victor Martinez. Even though he's on that Olympia stage, it's not where he's customarily used to being.
Front lat spread.
And as a programming note, when this portion of the judging completes, we will move in to the under 212-pound division, where the legendary, the now legendary James Flex Lewis will take a shot at another title in that division, a division he has dominated for several years. And we'll get to that in just a moment. So we still have a lot of ground to cover as our coverage here on Amazon.com continues. And these Olympia weekends, Sean, they are just endless storylines.
Absolutely. I saw 1983 Mr. Olympia, the Lion of Lebanon, in the house. Of course, 6-time Mr. Olympia Dorian Yates is bebopping around out there. You never know who you're going to walk into at these Mr. Olympia expos, and then you wind up here at the event. I heard that The Rock is going to be somewhere around, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, these are what gets people in the gym and come to Las Vegas to see these types of athletes. Very decorated, very accomplished, game changers, I'd call them, that paved the way for the guys that we're looking at tonight.
And you did mention Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's name. He will be in attendance for tomorrow night's event, so we're excited to welcome Dwayne back to Olympia weekend, where he has suddenly become a big part of the Olympia family, and we're very excited to welcome he and folks at 7 Bucks Productions to Las Vegas to be a big centerpiece here and be a part of the crowning of a new champion. So this sport has been become all about the stars. Arnold, I'm told, will be there, as you mentioned. Betty Weeder, I'm told, will be in town tomorrow as well.
And so now we come back, Dan, where the judges take another final look, and this is one of those things where it can really throw a monkey wrench in what we were thinking about, because now you got Dexter in the same call out as Sean Roden. And of course, we talked about how improved Nathan Diasha was, and I mentioned how Rolling Winkler gets better as he poses, but Brandon Currie, he's right there. This is something that he dreamed of. Brandon Currie standing next to Dexter Jackson on the Mr. Olympia stage. I mean, these are two Arnold Classic decorated winners from yesterday's past.
The two storylines in this call out is they're going to make Dexter Jackson fight a little bit more for that spot, and they're also going to give Sean Roden an opportunity to take that spot from the blade.
That's what you got to love about the IFBB and Steve Weinberger, making sure everyone's getting that look, getting that comparison. 1 minute, Sean Roden's dejected and Dexter Jackson elated, and now they're standing in the same comparison going, what the hell's going on here?
And they had to do this. They couldn't let this thing play out without Sean and Dexter standing next to each other, because those guys have gone toe-to-toe now for a few years. A rivalry has played out with these two guys kind of going back and forth. And, of course, Sean Roden got the best of Dexter a year ago, and you can be sure that among Dexter's objectives is to settle that score this year with Sean Roden.
Absolutely. And, again, every bodybuilder that's here feels like they have an equal opportunity to win. Sean Roden was very vocal about coming here to take the title from Phil Heath, and Phil Heath very vocal about not letting anyone take the title. And of course, Dexter Jackson's got the 2008 Sandow Trophy comfortably home on his mantle and would like nothing more than to walk off with the 400,000 plus tomorrow night here at the 53rd Mr. Olympia Championships.
So the other takeaway now from this call out is that clearly Big Ramy is in the top 3, but even still, more than that, William Bonac appears to be in the top 3, which is a really big story.
Well, Neil Hill, his trainer, we talked yesterday, and he said, look, take it to the house. William's better than he was a year ago, and right now, it sounds like he may be serving notice. 5'6", 229 pounds from the Netherlands. William Bonac is legit. But this is an interesting comparison, Dan, because we can flip some coins here, and things can change on a dime with respect to the different types of physiques that we're looking at. We're looking at an off Sean Roden. We're looking at an older Dexter Jackson, a young, fresh up-and-comer in Nathan Diashin, and, of course, Brandon Currie getting a second energized look by way of the Oxygen Gym and the Camel Crew. If those guys weren't there, Brandon Curry's not here.
You know, when you look at these guys, this particular call-up, it's really hard for a guy like Rolly Winkler to fit into this group. He becomes the odd man out in a lineup like this.
Yeah, because he's got so much muscle. He's kind of boxy. He's got the big arms. He doesn't have the pretty aesthetics. He's going to be standing between Dexter and Sean, two genetic freaks. In the relaxed pose, you're going to see as they start to open up, Rolly will start to lose ground between these two genetic freaks. But Sean Roden is just a little bit too comfortable in between rounds, relaxing his stomach. I'd like to see him keep that stomach tight like it is right now, but he has a tendency to take long, deep breaths, which tells me he's not in the kind of condition he's typically used to being in. That's Rolly's pose right there. I think it's very hard. Dexter Jackson can stand in it, but Rolly, after that, Rolly kind of starts to fade in comparison poses.
But that most muscular from Rolly Winkler is damn impressive.
It's world class.
Spread out, guys.
As if the stage isn't big enough, huh, Dan? Hitting elbows.
Take a step.
It's compared. There's a lot at stake. This has a tendency to set the tone for the kind of money these guys can make in terms of their guest appearances, in terms of their social media. I mean, 1st through 10th is very important to these bodybuilders. None of them want to lose, but it means something to place 7th, 6th, 5th place in the Mr. Olympia, especially 202.
But to see are all from different countries,
which is